Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you on this lovely Thursday evening? And I welcome any and everybody that is here today. And so today we're just going to talk a little bit about mental health and wellness. And if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat and I will answer your questions. So you can go ahead, introduce yourself if you want, but I am here to answer any questions that you may have as you navigate this place. So, something I want to talk about as we're in the world of a lot of chaos globally and nationally and even regionally, wherever you may be, one of the things I think is really important of how do you find peace and balance in the midst of chaos as the world is experiencing conflict. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you can navigate those spaces. One of the really big important things to do is finding solitude, right? And as you find solitude through meditation, through mindfulness, through silence, you get to understand what is triggering or what is entering into your space and how your body is responding to things that may trigger like conflict. So, one of the things that I think is really important for your overall mental health, right, is to meditate and to get in a really good space to have and be in relationship with your body so then you can understand when your body is being triggered by outside factors. And so once you can understand outside factors, right, then you can control what triggers certain emotions and behaviors from you. And so as you navigate that space, right, with elections coming up, it's how do you control that? How do you find peace in the midst of these things? And one of the things you can also do is be mindful of what you're watching, what you're consuming, and do some self care, right? I understand that self care is a very cliche word at times, but it really starts with changing your consciousness. And that is how you reduce stress. So once you can change your consciousness around your wellness, then self-care is really something that you can start implementing. So I see that four people are on and welcome. And so I just want to know if there's any questions that you have around mental health and wellness that you may be navigating as a parent, as a adult, right? As you're navigating the world with your relationships with your children, with your parents. Um, and so, yes. And so, yes, 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 100%. Yeah, we got to be careful of what we consume, watch, read, drink, eat. And so, if we think about the vibrations of food, yes, mama matters with Jess, right? If we think about the vibration of food, if we go to McDonald's and we think about those French fries, right? um, there's been studies. I think Iceland did a study. I think they closed their last McDonald's and they got a Happy Meal. Somebody got a Happy Meal and put it in a museum. And I think for 7 years, don't get me quote me wrong, but for a long time, they put the McDonald's a Happy Meal in a container, and it did not go bad. So if we think the vibration of food, if somebody's not happy about the food that they're cooking at these fast food restaurants, right? Then that vibration actually goes into your food. So you have to be mindful of what you're eating and what you're consuming because those vibrations, if you're not clearing yourself, if you're not meditating, if you're not smudging, if you're not being aware of your own vibration, then you are actually becoming consumed by the environments in which you visit. So just be mindful of that. But if anybody has any questions that they may have for me, I would love for you to put it in the chat. So I'm going to just kind of keep talking about how can you find peace when there's so much chaos. So something I think is really important, I think we don't realize is there's not many spaces you can be in. Actually, I don't think there's any where you can't find something that has no noise. So something that's really important that I want you to try is go to three environments that you go into on a regular basis. And I just want you to set the intention of being mindful of the noise and the sound that's in those environments. And notice and witness how it impacts your mood. So just check to see how you felt before you went in, while you're in there, and then when you come out. And notice and witness how those sounds and those noises and their frequencies and the vibrations impact you. So as we're in a space that there's conflict, and especially the elections, what you got to do is be really mindful of the environments and what you dance in, what you walk in, what you're running in, what you're engaging with. So then you can clear your energy field and your aura if it gets stuck in that. Because then that energy really does dictate how you dance with your children, your spouse, your partner, strangers. And you don't want somebody or something's energy to dictate your movements. You want to be in control of yourself. So I want you just to think about that. Something that's really important is I was listening to a podcast, and it was TED Talk. It was a TED Talk hour or TED hour, and it talked about electronics. So I don't know if I'm not in electronics as much, and I try not to consume as much media, but they talked about screen apnea. Has anybody ever heard of screen apnea? And can you please, if you have, you can put something in the chat. And if you haven't, you can say no. But has anybody ever heard of screen apnea? Well, okay. Yes, Miss. So screen apnea is when we scroll through our um through our phones, or when we're checking emails, or when we're on our computers for work. Screen apnea is we're actually holding our breath. And there is a woman that is in tech that realized that she was like not breathing when she was navigating her emails or her screen, her technology, her phone and stuff. Or when she was on the computer, she was holding her breath. And one of the things we do know about holding our breath, right? It actually puts our body into the fight, flight, or freeze space, and our body does not know what is a threat. So our body, when we hold our breath, our body thinks that we're in danger, and so it is activating this fight or flight or freeze like um, response, and we're not in danger. We're just not breathing because we're checking an email or we're scrolling through our phone. So screen apnea is that. And so we got to really think about it. So if we're not breathing and we're putting our body into this fight, flight, or freeze mentality, right? This energy in this space, then what's also happening is that our cortisol levels are increasing because our body is trying to protect us from danger. Our body does not know what real danger is because it's just going off the signals of you not breathing. So when we think about screen apnea, you got to really pay attention, right? If you're not breathing and you're at work and you're going through your screen, you're doing emails and you're just tense, then think about when you transition to being with your kids or being with your partner or even just being with yourself. It's how do you go and start breathing? How do you kind of reset your system, your autonomic nervous system, so you get to pick and choose if you want to be in the fight, flight, or freeze or rest and digest? So that's what screen apnea is. And I think we all do it, but it's being mindful. It's almost like walking away from your screen every 30 minutes or just practicing breathing. Because sometimes when I'm thinking about a deep thought, I will catch myself not breathing. I will feel my like shoulders up near my ears. And so just be aware, and even be aware if you're a mom or a dad, just a parent, just be aware of your kids doing the same thing and taking time for them to like implementing time for them to breathe. Just say, hey, we're going to breathe right now. And so they know the difference. So babies really breathe the right way a lot of times. And then over time, we actually breathe the wrong way. So I see some more people on. If you have any questions, I want you to type it in the chat. It's around wellness, mental health, and just wanted to support you guys, and I appreciate you guys being here. Um, and so, yeah, does anybody have any questions? So I know in certain counties, people are, I know it's the end of July, but people are getting ready to go back to school. Is there any parents, are there any parents in the room, you know, that have questions about transition, if their kids are about to transition to school, like elementary school? But yeah, that's a good question. How do you access it from a mobile phone? Um, let's see. Slow mo. I don't. It might be like the chat. Is a chat coming up on the side for them for mobile phones, or at the bottom? I think they might be able to put something in there. Let's see. Okay. Um, I don't know. I would have to. Let's see. I don't know how that comes up. I might have to, so good question. I thought it might be under, so I know that when I've been on the phone, it'll be on the side or under it, I think. Because I know mine is on the right-hand side. But just wondering if you guys have any questions. My I think wellness is well, I think I truly believe wellness is important for your overall well-being, and implementing um, a wellness routine can help you navigate the world, but you have to be mindful of what you're consuming. And so that's something I just wanted to share. If you don't have any questions, um, I will stay on if just to see if anything comes up. Just if you know anybody that has any questions, I guess if they're on the phone, if they might have a question, if you feel compelled, you can write it in if you know anybody. But I don't know about the phone. I'll have to check it next time. Oh, that's a good question. So, what would I recommend for kids returning to school who has anxiety around the return? So, something I would recommend, well, I got a couple questions. What would be the school age? Would it be middle school, elementary school? Are they transitioning from one building to the next? And I'll answer different ones. So if it's in the same school that they're going to, something that I would recommend would uh, be able to talk with the kids if it's elementary school. Do they like their school? Is there a certain teacher they like? Is there a certain friend that they like? But just kind of start to implement that within, so some schools are going back the 19th of August, like in the middle of August, the second or third week of August. Some schools, I think, are going back after Labor Day, but it's just starting to implement that kind of weekly. So if a kid has anxiety around going back to school, and say there's like 6 more weeks in summertime, right? It's maybe each week getting them closer to going. So maybe it's like, hey, let's visit the school. It doesn't mean going in, but it might mean, hey, let's go to the playground. Let's just kind of feel what it feels like to be in this space. So then what you can do as a parent, you can talk to them about their anxiousness or how they're feeling before they're going to the playground, how they're feeling there, and just checking in, like you get to notice how your child may be feeling going to the playground or the anxiousness around that. Um, and so just being able to prepare them of what are you anxious about, and maybe not even really assign that word to it, but what are you anticipating? what do you need to navigate that space of school? And you can kind of start having a dialogue, and it doesn't have to be school. It doesn't, we don't have to use those words, but being able to identify what are they anxious about can really help inform you as a parent to find solutions. And as you find solutions, what you can start doing is empowering them to really utilize those solutions, right? Those things that may cause anxiety. And they can build and empower themselves to navigate that anxiousness. So, and then I know that high school, yeah, high school does it, but they have like back to school night or whatever and open house. But just being able to go to those things, open house, that's before school, but open house. And being able to go to open house if there's something that you have to drop off at the school, letting them go there. So then when they come home or when they come back with you, from you maybe dropping a piece of paper off or a document, then you get to have the conversation with them and you get to notice and witness how they're feeling. And so then you can talk and have dialogue, or you can do play. You can say, "Hey, I noticed that entering the school building caused some big emotions, big feelings. What would you want to do to let those big feelings go away?" And it might be, "Hey, I just want to cuddle with you," right? Nothing wrong with that. So that means that they need touch. Or, "Hey, I want to go play." So that means that they need to do something to process that feeling that they had. And so you get to learn what modality works with them to soothe them from something around big emotions like going to school, like the anxiety around that. So you could do that with even high school kids. A lot of times high school kids are in their phones, but the high school kids, like, they still want mommy and daddy. They still, like, no matter what they say, they still want you there. And so you just try to meet them where they are. I know that they have this wall up of like, "No, I don't want you parents," but it's the still like, it might be like, "Hey, I want my favorite food," or I want the favorite food of when I was 5, and just ask them how do they want to process those big emotions is really important. And so you can navigate and you can understand what they need in that moment. And now you're learning your child's anxious language, because that's really important, because then you can communicate it to the school, the teacher, the school counselor. And so then they can help facilitate that transition back into school. And something you might want to do is just let the teachers know if that is something that they don't already know, and just say, "Hey, I picked up on this with my child, with my, and this is something that may help them." So they have that. Um, in the back of their head as they interact with your child. So, how do you build and foster confidence in a child age 8? So, one of the things I think with that is, what's something that they enjoy? So, one of the things that I think is really hard in today's society is the working parent. Um, or having multiple kids, right? Because it's really important to learn the love language and the language of your child. So if your child loves, let's say, robotics, but you're trying to get them into watercolors, right? And it's like, they're like, I'm not doing that. Or they like to design or put things together in the house. They might be working with pots and pans or whatever. You got to learn, you got to get down to the child's level. And that may mean that you need to be a student in your child's world. So you need to play the student and they need to be the teacher, or they need to be the parent and you be the child. So you can learn more about your child. And so once you learn more about your child, then it's the small things of in which they show you how to build confidence. So if your child is a visual learner, for example, but you constantly are putting auditory things in their view to learn, that's not building confidence. So if they're a visual learner, then you want to deliver things to them that is going to make them feel successful and build their confidence. So if it's, "Hey, how," or they're tactile or kinesthetic, "Hey, how to do multiplication," right? So 8 or second grade or going into 9, depending on where they are in that, going into third grade, I'm sorry, second or third. But depending on that is, how do we really capitalize on their strengths is really important. but it really, because of the day and things taking you away from your children, a lot of times parents are just trying to the hustle and bustle of living and making sure your kids are fed, making sure, right? The parent guilt, mommy guilt, daddy guilt is real. And I think sometimes it takes away from a parent really learning the language of their child, because then there's these pressures of society saying you need to teach your kids this, you need to do that. So my biggest thing is learning what your child's strengths are in that. And once you learn that, then you can build confidence in those activities that is their strength. And then it builds that up. And then you can say, okay, let's try this. So if they're a visual learner and then you want to say, hey, I want you to learn something through auditory, they already have the confidence and they have that muscle that they can complete those things and they can have a high level of success. But even if they don't have success, you're breaking it down and you can kind of say, hey, what did you learn? And one of the things I want you to also to think about is how to foster confidence in your 8-year-old. Also, how do you show confidence to your 8-year-old? How do you show how confident you are? Do you show when you don't have successes? So you're a model. So you got to think about your own inner confidence and your own self-worth and confidence, because sometimes parents, when we lack confidence, our kids see it. And I know we try really hard to shield them from it. So you got to be aware of your own and maybe find a way to share your story of when you may have lacked confidence. So they know, oh, mommy or daddy, they were lacking confidence, but look at them now. So that's something that we always want our children to be better than us. And I get it. But we have to check ourselves as parents, as aunties, uncles, as an extended family for these kids of how do we move through the universe and the world, and are we asking something of them that we may not have had at that time, and then just be transparent with them, because it's not easy. Life is not easy. Like it's hard. We navigate these spaces, and showing that you have confidence as a parent, that could be a difficult thing. I think about my parents and being like, wow, being an adult was this can kind of be hard. And I'm learning that now, but they did a pretty freaking amazing job to like be present as much as they could be present. So, are there any other questions? And so people have come on and come off. So you feel free to put any questions in the chat. This is a mental health and wellness space. If you're a parent, you can ask questions for your children. Even if you're not a parent, if there's some questions that you have around mental health and wellness, I'm here to give you some tips and tools. So just let me know. All right, so we got a question is, what are some signs that your child may need counseling? So I there's some different signs. So for it's a little maybe at like upper elementary through high school. So one of the big signs for when your child needs counseling is when they lose interest in the things that they once loved. That is a major sign. So if your child enjoyed reading books or hanging out with a girlfriend or a guy friend, or they enjoyed playing a sport or interacting or playing a video game, and they lost interest in that and they're not doing that anymore, that is a sign. And probably like 5th grade and up, if your child is sleeping more than usual, that is a sign. I understand that when kids are like 6th grade, depending on their age, like 6th grade and up, and sometimes 5th grade, I know that there's some children that sleep because they're growing, but if there's a increase in sleeping, that is a sign that there's something going on. There's something that they may need counseling. And I recommend, especially today after COVID, like the lockdown, I actually recommend parents to have a therapist on call. I'm not saying you got to go every week, but I think having a therapist navigate the developmental stages, because there's some developmental stages that children go through that doesn't need any guidance, but there are some that do. It's just like the pediatrician. So if you're a parent, sometimes there was a certain age that your child may be going to the doctor, like, oh man, we're in the doctor's office again. And then there are certain ages that maybe your child didn't have to go. And so I highly recommend just having a therapist that you can go to, because sometimes if a crisis arises, it's hard to get into a therapist's office. And so some of the signs may be also, if they're younger, they're withdrawing, they might be reverting back to being like a child, like a toddler. So if they're 7, 8, and they come back to being 2 years old, right? Then those are things that you may have to kind of comb through what it is. And one of the things I would recommend is tapping into the school counselor's off, like the school counselor, of like, hey, can you just put an eye on my child just to kind of notice and witness if things are going on? And so now you have another set of eyes beyond the teacher's eyes, but that counselor who is trained in mental health and just the well-being of a child, that then they can go check on them or they can pull them for lunch. And so they're now seeing your child in a different setting that you don't get to see. And so it's just noticing and witnessing. Are they having conflict with their friends more than usual? Are they having conflict with their siblings? Um, are they talking? I know now today, there's this hyper vigilant around words around I want to kill myself, and I understand that. But I think it's like, what kind of vocabulary are they using? I know sometimes when people go to after school and everything, they're around older kids. So what vocabulary are they using? Um, are they talking about injuring themselves? Those are like signs that, oh wow, like what is their normal personality, and is this outside of their norm? And so sometimes those are the signs of, oh, we just need to seek somebody out, or are they calling out for help? Are they having some tantrums that's different than usual? Are they crying a little bit harder, or are they scared of something? And so those are some of the signs of that your child may need counseling. Um, and just being able to have a space. And also for parents, parenting isn't easy. Like, it is not easy, because you have your own stuff and then you have your kids' stuff, and you're like, I don't want to mess my kid up. And it's all this worry, right, about the future. And so sometimes just even having a counselor for parenting, a parenting coach, is really important, because then you are diligent and intentional and picking up and learning your child's personality in a different way, being intentional about it. Thank you, Jess, for these questions. Any other questions? So, I would love for you guys to come back if you have any questions. I will be doing this every Thursday at 7 p.m. Um, how do you find a good therapist match for your child? Great question. So, um, a lot of therapists have free consultations. And one of the things I know I do when it comes to any school age child, is that first I talk to the parent and then I talk to the child out. Like, so I do two consultations, because it's not just about the fit for the parent, it's the fit for the kid. And so we just have this very like open conversation, like, tell me what you like to eat, tell me what you don't like, what's your music, hey, when was the last time you farted? Like, it's really getting to their level of like, oh, this is a different type of adult. And so the way that you can go about finding a good therapist is, one, consult your friends and family, ask them if they know any child therapists, right? Do they know anybody that's out there? And being able to ask them for a referral. Two, you can go to Psychology Today. You can ask your pediatrician. Um, if I think for the younger kids, I think play therapy is really important. Um, art therapy, just the modalities of therapy where kids don't really have to use words to share their emotions, but they're using play, they're using action to process so it can move through their body and not get stuck. So I think what's really cool is like doing play therapy, movement therapy, art therapy, but seeking out those associations. They have a directory, or you can go on Psychology Today, and those places um, have the therapist's qualifications. And so you can reach out to them and ask them if they have consultation, and what's their process to get to knowing your child. And so you as a parent, right? Your intuition, you got to trust your intuition. And you really have to think about what is what is the what's your intention? And sometimes parents, your intention for what you want your child in therapy can be sometimes hard to work, hard to attain, like hard for the therapist to do. So if your child is not able to listen to you at home, right, or just has a certain temperament, sometimes parents will come in and say, hey, I need you to fix this, and you can't fix it. It's a really the parent that we got to look at of how do you navigate their temperament, because that's who they are. So you want to interview that therapist, but also you want to see if that therapist is a good fit, but you want to see the engagement between that therapist and your child. But it really is all about interviewing the provider, but also, or the therapist, but also allowing your child to interview the provider as well. That's really important. And I understand that time is of the essence sometimes, but maybe doing virtual, being like, hey, this is somebody I was thinking about, or just being able to, even if you can go into the office and really just seeing that energy for a little bit if they have that opportunity. So something I do is when I was in the office more, I would have people come in. I would talk to the parent, and then I would have the kids come in. And what I would do is I especially my girls who were like in the fourth, fifth grade, because young girls' voice gets muted around puberty, that I would tell the parents that, hey, I'm not putting your daughter on the spot, so I need you to go speak to them, to your daughter individually, and let me know what they want to do, because I don't want them to come and think that they have to tell me they want to continue when they really don't. So you really want to ask, like, what is the therapist's approach with with kids, period, and have they ever worked with that particular topic or issue that you're bringing to the session. So that's how you would find a good therapist. Um, and some of the questions I would even ask a therapist of, hey, my intention is to keep you long term. Are you willing and able to join my village, my tribe, for my kids and my kids' well being? And that's really important, because you would want somebody that's navigated the developmental stages with your child. And also, if issues arise that are beyond their scope, then you want to be able to find another therapist, and you want them to be transparent of saying, hey, I can't help you with that. So yes. Thank you. Glow glow. What else? Anything else? We got some more people on. Hey, hey, howdy. So basically you can ask questions um around mental health and wellness, and I will try to answer your questions and just talking. I appreciate everybody that's on right now. Um, we will be here every Thursday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You know, if you feel that you have other questions, or, during the time, you can always put it in the comments, and then I can come up with the answers the next time. But yeah, anything else? So, what are your recommendations for parents, aunties, uncles with traumatic childhoods and interacting positive with children and teens? You added Mama Matters. You added Jess. So, what I recommend, man, that well, one, right, is So it's kind of two parts. One is when there's these traumatic childhoods that people navigate, right? Parents, aunties, the family, right? Um, you gotta you have to surrender. So trauma is really, I think we all experience trauma and variations, right? So some events to one person may not be traumatic, and those events can be different and traumatic to another person. So it's really important, I think, to identify the traumatic events. And once you can identify it, it's almost surrendering to those the traumatic events, but also seeing how they show up in your present day. So I'll give you an example. I didn't feel seen by my mom, right? And I didn't like that feeling, so I became a people pleaser. So I'm an auntie, and one of the things that was really important for my niece, that was really important for her, is that I wanted her to be seen. I wanted her to be recognized, but I also wanted her to know that no matter where she went, she always had a home. So when she would come to my parents' house at the beginning, she didn't have a room. But then I told my parents, I was like, hey, she needs a room. She needs to be able to decorate it. Like, this is her own. Because at a young age, she didn't have her own room in certain times, right? So one of the things is just recognizing and acknowledging, but also healing, right? So healing looks different in various manners, right? So somebody might, in some cultures, somebody might visit a shaman. In another culture, somebody might visit their pastor and talk to their pastor or a religion. And then somebody might visit a therapist or a healing guide. So it really depends, but it really is important to understand how your trauma shows up in your body, how it shows up in your day to day with interacting with the children or the teenagers. So if things have happened to you at a certain age, right? Say you were a teenager that something happened to you, and then you're talking to your teenager child or niece or nephew, you got to be cautious of what you're saying to them, and is it coming from a traumatic place? And how you're educating them and how you may be putting your trauma experience onto them. And so you got to be cautious because you don't want to put your traumatic experience on them, because that's not theirs. And so you don't want to come from a fearful place. You want to come from an educational place. And so something even from the family system, if that traumatic experience is passed down from generation to generation, then you want to educate them on it. You want to give them tools about that. And so just something that you just got to be aware of. So a lot of trauma, or there's a lot of themes in our family system that the generations the generations after us experience, or they're already aware of it from an energetic standpoint. So you just have to be mindful. So I know that something that my mom said is like, alcoholism is a disease in my family and it skips generations, she said, right? I don't know if that to be true, whatever. But I know that I was more aware of alcohol because she told me, to the point that I didn't start drinking anything like wine until 34, because I didn't want to like experience anything around that until I felt responsible. So it's really educating and being, not having a whole bunch of fear and navigating that space. So not navigating the space from fear, but educating and letting them know some of those experiences, and letting them know how others may have reacted and responded, and what are the themes in the family system, because they are a part of the family system. And so educating them from a positive space and interacting with them positively, but also thinking about how you would have wanted to be spoken to at that time, or how you wanted to be seen or acknowledged or comforted, like, and so nurtured. And so you got to think about how you can give that to them, but also honoring your inner child. And when you show up for your inner child, then you're actually nurturing the part of you that's been traumatized, that your mom or dad couldn't show up for you in those spaces, that you start to show up for you. So yeah, that's my recommendations. Does anybody have any questions? Any other questions? I'm loving this. Thank you. So I feel like I'm on the mic. I'm a DJ. I got to give a shout out to my business coach, Lindsay. He told me that I needed to start doing this. I was a little fearful, but I was like, let me get on here. Yes, thank you, Jess. I appreciate it. Um, yes, 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 yes. Screen apnea. What I'll do when this finishes, I'm gonna put some links and around the screen apnea. It's a podcast, and then actually it's a book that they reference. Um, it's called Breath, and it goes through culturally how certain cultures um like really focus on the breath. Like I think there is a tribe in like I don't know if it's in Alaska, if we want a Native American indigenous tribe that actually has people, aunties, like people in the tribe when there's newborns that they will close their mouths when they're sleeping. If they open their mouth, like they purposely stay up to close their mouths so they can breathe out of their nose while they're sleeping. So this book is really cool about like talking about the importance of breathing, but the the podcasts had this author on there and another woman who's been in tech who talked about screen apnea and how we're not breathing. So it's pretty dope. But yeah, I'll once everything is um, done uploading, you can always come back to this. I will put it up on my channel. Anything else? I thank you guys. But yeah, we will be doing this. Thank you for the comments and the questions. And I want to see you back next week with questions. I'm here. If something comes up, just, in the comment section, I'll make sure I have the answer. How can you instill positivity into your day? That's a good question. One, you got to identify what your positivity is, right? So, Mama Matters, Jess, I was watching I was watching some of your shorts and I was getting like, "Oh my gosh, I want to make I want to make your salsa," and I was like vibing with your with just speaking Spanish and like just vibing, right? And so for me, what positivity um is is how do you instill positivity into your day? You got to think about the things that like lights you up, that brings you joy. So for example, Saturday, I'm going to a cooking class. I'm going to learn how to make pad thai. I'm going to make a mocktail. I'm going to make Thai spring rolls or summer rolls and a dessert, right? So that there's positivity. So sometimes you got to like schedule things out. And so positivity can be a mantra, it could be a family life song, right? It could be what's our mission statement as a family for this year, for the remainder of the year. And so you might want to have words or mantras or just get a sentence strip. Do you guys remember sentence strips in like elementary school? But you can get a strip, a piece of paper, and maybe write something that's positive for you and the kids, right? For the family. And so, one is being mindful of what you are watching. It goes back to consuming and being mindful who you're interacting with. Excuse me. And as you're mindful of who you're interacting with, you have to think about what's the exchange? What are they giving? And what are you giving? And what are you receiving? And so you notice the exchange, does it deplete you or does it give you energy? So if there's 5 people you interacted with today, and the exchange was depletion, guess what? It's hard to get to a positive place and have positivity radiating through your life for that day. So you got to think about the exchange. And I understand that sometimes we might work with people, we might have to be forced to talk to people. And so after you finish talking with them, you can like clear yourself from that person and that energy. Or you can say a prayer, or you can actually smudge them, or before you talk to them, or even in the midst of the conversation, you can just close your third eye. If anybody is aware of that, you can close your third eye, because then once you close your third eye, you're not intercepting that energy. You're being very mindful of that. And something with the littles, right? All right, hold on. Something with the littles. Something with the littles. What you can do is come up with a ritual with them that it sparks joy and positivity. So something that one of something that I know that I had told um, a mom to do when their child had to go over to their dad's, and the mom and the dad they weren't on the best speaking terms, and they really weren't co-parenting, was creating a little patch, like a plastic bag, or a sandwich bag for them, that may have had a little note for them, had like a crystal for them, had your scent, had something that really tapped into every scent, right? So if it was a smell, if it was a picture, they're hearing, something that may be, and it can be hard a little bit, but something that you can always kind of go into. They can always like, okay, what's our positivity bag, right? Something that's going to bring them joy. So you want to think about that, because kids, what's so dope at their ages, like for kids, they have this imagination. As adults, we're the ones who stop exploring and discovering and using our imagination. So they probably can teach us a little bit about positivity. And I know that this world is really negative, but I bet you they can be like, all right, I'm gonna put on, my Spider-Man suit, and like imagination. And then they can be like, and this is what we're gonna do. And then that's positivity and joy. So just be mindful. Sometimes it's us as adults, but you might want to create like a joyful bag, or sandwich bag, or a gratitude, like, hey, what we're grateful for. Or let's have laughter. Like laughing yoga is pretty dope. You just laugh, right? And so you just have to be mindful of the energies that come home, especially when the kids come home from school, or being with people that that their energy is not on point, right? You got to clear them. You got to be mindful of clearing, so that energy is not there. And sometimes, I know this might sound weird a little bit. Sometimes you got to clear them to the point that, okay, we're going to take your clothes off your bag. We're going to put all your clothes in the wash, and we're going to get in the shower right away, because we don't want that energy here. And that's really important to do. Um, and that's important for adults to do. If you've had a long trip, you were on the plane, when you get home, take off your clothes. Like, don't, I know, like, take off your clothes, instantly put them in the shower, and put them in the wash and get in the shower, because there's, when you travel and you're on the plane, for example, there's a lot of energy that can sit here and get on you. So just be mindful of that. So how do you smudge someone? Right. So you can just do this, right? You can get in a car and smudge the car for safety, for it to be safe. So if you're in a board meeting, or you're in the Zoom, and you're like, this person is getting on my nerves, right? You can smudge under the table, and just sending them energy, of like, okay, stop, right? And you can, as you close your third eye, you could do the same thing. You can close your third eye and say, hey, we're going to close right now, because there's nothing we need. So one of the things that I have been taught by one of my mentors, she works with first responders, and she worked with a lot of first responders during 9/11 at the Pentagon. And she's worked on the battlefield. And so you don't want to close those people's third eye all the way, but you want to close their third eye, so the things that are happening in that space, it doesn't get lodged in their body, and they don't become sick emotionally or physically. So even closing your third eye, but smudging, you can just smudge. So if somebody's talking and you're like, oh my gosh, this is too much, you can just smudge, and you can send love, and just to their higher self, of like, hey, whatever's going on is going on, but I release, like, I'm not going to take on any of that. You can just smudge it like that. It works. I've used it quite a few times. I can't even count, but yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Anything else, guys? I know some people have gotten on and left, but if you're new, if you got any questions, put it in the chat. Um, I'm gonna once everything finishes, this will be up. You can always subscribe if you're not subscribed. Um, yeah, I appreciate you guys for being here, asking questions. How do you deal with stressful days and not transfer it to others? One, it's to identify that it's stressful, right? Like, oh man, this day was hard. And two, it's also communicating to the people that are around you. I had a stressful day and I need some time to myself. So, one of the things that my mom did, my mom was a school teacher, and she told me that when she got home from teaching, she did not want anybody else's child in the house for the first 30 minutes. And as I got older and as I started teaching myself, I understood what she meant because she's been dealing with somebody else's children for the whole day. And that when she comes home, she didn't want to deal with anybody else's children. So when it comes to stressful days, for me, I think it's really important to start identifying them, but communicating, even if it's to your children, because what you're doing and helping them to do is identify when when they're stressful or they're not feeling good. And you just want to model to them, especially if you have littles, you want to model to them like, hey, mommy or daddy is not always on 100. Like sometimes mommy has like low days or stressful days as well, and so you just want to start communicating. I think they're like when you can communicate and teach wellness and like wellness to children, it's really you being transparent of what is a stressful day, what is a stressful event, and letting them know, hey, mom's gonna go, mommy's gonna lay down and we're gonna have quiet time. If you don't like quiet time, then you can go in your room and you can go play something, but mommy needs quiet time for 30 minutes. And really being adamant. I know it's really difficult, in particular for mommies to do that because mommy guilt is real. I'll tell moms to go in the daggone bathroom for 5 minutes. I don't care if the child is knocking on the door, but you have to be a human being and not be this superhuman, in which a lot of moms are. So you just got to be able to communicate that and not hold it in and think that you got to be a superwoman or superman or the superhuman. So just be like, hey, today wasn't good, because that's something that if you have littles, that's something that you want to communicate to them so then they can raise their hand and say, hey, I didn't have a good day. And so you start giving them vocabulary and opportunity to recognize, well, what is not a good day? So you want to do that. And sometimes you just got to be like, I got to take a pause and raise your hand and be like, I'm not okay. And it's okay. And I know that's really hard for us brown and black women. Um, the exhaustion is no joke. And it's the exhaustion is actually what causes sometimes for us to have chronic illnesses or injuries to slow our behind down. And we got to learn how to take time for ourselves and just say, hey, I'm stressed. I don't got it right now. And even if it's 30 minutes, and I know that you got to keep moving and keep grooving, but understand that if if you're not okay, the rest of the people are not okay. You got to take, and I know it's cliche, but you got to take care of yourself. Um, in order to make the household flow and stuff. Yes, yes, yes. Anything else? If anybody's new on here, put some questions in the chat and I will answer those questions. We're almost out of time. I want to thank everybody who showed up. Like I said, we'll be here every Thursday at 7, um, just asking questions about mental health and wellness. And I will put resources in the description. But if you have any questions before we wrap up, just let me know. Well, I am going to end. Make sure you guys have a powerful, beautiful, and lovely rest of the day and weekend. Um, Thank you so much for the questions and showing up. Be well, be amazing, and most of all, be you guys. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. Talk to you guys later.